For more on the Trump indictment, we've reached longtime pollster and political strategist Frank Luntz. Mr. Luntz was on this show during the January 6th attack on Capitol Hill. Frank, thanks very much for joining us.
Well, hopefully I will not be as emotional today as I was that evening.
Yeah, you were emotional. It was an emotional evening. You were describing it as a disgrace, what was happening in the United States. You were angry at Donald Trump, who was then the president, and now here we are. Those 2.5 years later, he's facing criminal charges, quite a few of them, this time over his role in the events that day. So your thoughts now?
Well, here's the problem. I stayed up all night into the morning listening to our cable news networks describe what was happening. And you had one completely different scenario on one network than you had on another network or the third network. It's not that we disagree with solutions, or disagree with the problems. We don't even agree on the same facts anymore. And depending on where you get your news, it's frankly to affirm rather than inform. And I don't know how you address that. I don't know how you bring people back together. And most importantly, with what has happened with President Trump, I don't know how you instill accountability anymore.
Can you see, to put it bluntly, can you see a future, a bright future for your country?
And let's put it the other way. Could this be the beginning of the end? And it's now conceivable. It's the same thing I feel towards AI. There's a 10% likelihood that everything goes to hell. Last night, I'm listening on some of these news networks as people are swearing, as they're talking in a way that I've never heard Americans talk on television before. Everything that I thought was impossible is now happening. So if you ask me how bad can it get, I don't know. But I know it can be a lot worse. And I know that whatever happens here is coming to you all, maybe 5 years down the road. And it's a very sad day.
What are your thoughts on how this indictment, how the charges that Trump is facing could further polarize politics in the United States?
Well, if you listen to the conservatives, their complaint with the indictment is that it's basically weaponizing communication. And to be specific, they're claiming that this is all about, okay, they're acknowledging that the truth was not told. Let's be more blunt. They're acknowledging that Trump told a lie, but they're saying that it's not illegal. And on the left, the analysis is that Donald Trump attempted to undo the democracy and actually created the environment where these things on January 6th did happen. And that he knew that what he was saying was not just wrong, but was dishonest. And he said them anyway, and that had a really negative impact on the things that followed. The legal experts I speak to tell me that of all the indictments, this is the worst. Of all the indictments, this one is most likely to have an impact because it happened while he was president. The other issues happened either before or after. This was while he was in the Oval Office. And what does that say about the strength of our democracy? Well, maybe it's a positive because they're holding him accountable, but the very fact that this happened is really problematic.
And there is a very strong possibility that Donald Trump will be back in the White House. It's a near certainty he's going to win the GOP nomination. He, in current polling at least, looks basically neck and neck with the current president, Joe Biden. Do you think his supporters, Republican supporters, generally care about these charges?
No, and that's one of the things we found in our focus groups is that Republicans are prepared to dismiss it because they don't see that the Biden administration is being held to the same standard. And that's what I said to you about accountability and how important that is. You cannot weaponize Washington, which is exactly what they've done. The Republicans tried to destroy the Democrats. The Democrats tried to destroy the Republicans. You know what gets destroyed? The 337 million Americans and our democracy in the process. Trump is more likely than not to win the Republican nomination. He's dead even with Joe Biden and all the work that we've done. And the thing that I raise is that Joe Biden is already 80 years old. And Donald Trump is already even with him, even with all these indictments. And there may be more to come. We're not done yet. There are 2 other cases that are working their way through. Trump may have 4 or even 5 trials between now and Election Day.
Do
It's
those
just
make him stronger?
inconceivable.
It seems like every single time there are new charges, that there's a louder cry and that his poll numbers actually go up. Is this making him stronger?
Yes, because people see him as being a victim, and he plays the victim card incredibly well. And what has happened, because it's one after another, it now looks like it's not that he's being prosecuted, but that he's being persecuted. And there's one thing that happens. I want to draw an insight for your viewers. Trump gets the bully pulpit for 3 or 4 or 5 days from the moment you hear about the indictment until he answers it. He controls the airwaves. You can't describe what's written in it. You can't make the case for why Trump is guilty before he makes the case for why he's innocent. So those 3 or 4 or 5 days are absolutely essential. Trump gets to control the narrative. So by the time the indictment actually hits, you've heard everything from Donald Trump, but you haven't heard the reason why he's being indicted. And I think that that process is hurting the government. I think it's hurting our judicial system. But I have to give you one caveat, which is that you can prosecute anyone in this country. The Justice Department absolutely has been shown to take a zeal at prosecution, and they will throw everything at bringing somebody down. And Trump has been able to show that in his defense. And it shows once again that these elements of American democracy are under severe pressure, and they could break.
So I got less than a minute left with you, but we began this discussion by talking, of course, about January 6th. You were on this program on that day. Trump is now facing these indictments because of that. Do you see that happening again?
I do see it happening again. It's one of the reasons why I do this show. I've worked in Canada. I've spent a lot of time across the border. I appreciate the kindness and generosity of your population. It's the way America used to be before we became so angry and so bitter. This is my warning to Canadians. Don't follow this course. There's something to be said about listening and learning from people. There's something to be said about engaging the population and actually getting things done, but not where you're mean, not where you're crude, not where you're rude or vicious. That civility and decency are essential on both sides of the border. Please, Canada, don't follow America. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I believe it. Don't follow where we are.
Frank Luntz, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.